So I currently have the Autograph card as well as the BILT MasterCard by Wells Fargo. But if I could only choose one of them, which one would be the best option to pick? How we'll do this is we'll cover what each of these cards have to offer to us, as well as the pros and cons of choosing one over the other. And finally, I'll share my personal experience and rationale, as well as the hands-on experience of what it really looks like to make the best decision for you. Now, right before getting into it, what's important to note is the following key points. Both of these cards have no annual fees, which means it costs us nothing whether we choose one way or the other. The second point is that although both of these cards are issued through Wells Fargo, what's important to note is that for each and every dollar spent on these cards, they do not earn the same rewards/currencies. In other words, it's like they're two different programs where the Wells Fargo Autograph earns its version of, let's say, Wells Fargo reward points, where with the BILT MasterCard, it'd be BILT reward points, which can be redeemed in a totally separate way. So essentially, it's two different ways, and I'll be breaking down why it matters to choose one or the other, given this nuance and a lot of other points. Right before we get into it, the points that we earned with both of these cards, they could be transferred to airline and hotel programs, which usually in the credit card sphere, where you can travel for free and travel first class and business class and stay in 5-star luxurious hotels. These cards can earn us certain points, which we can transfer out and get these exact experiences, which is another reason I think this video could be really helpful for those that are looking for no annual fee credit cards, but then having a decision to make. And then specifically with here, we'll be comparing these two cards. And with that, let's get straight into it. When it comes to sign-up bonuses and credit cards, it's usually the main big kind of headline value of why you would choose a certain card over another. With the BILT MasterCard, officially there is no intro offer whatsoever. And there were times where maybe let's say you get 5x points for the first 5 days when you get approved for this card and you're spending on it up to, let's say, a certain cap such as 50,000 points in that 5-day period. But officially, at the time of recording and in general, the BILT MasterCard has no public sign-up bonus offer, intro card member offer, new card member offer, all those things. On the other hand, with the Autograph card, the current sign-up bonus is 20,000 points after $1,000 in minimum spend in the first 3 months. Similar to the concept of these bonus offers changing time over time, when I got approved for the Wells Fargo Autograph card, it was a limited time offer of, instead of 20,000 points, it was 30,000 points for that same minimum spend in the same time frame. There's a secondary part of this intro offer where it's 0% APR for the first 12 months on purchases. Coming to the earn rate, although the BILT MasterCard doesn't have an official intro offer, there is this unique selling point which makes the card so famous as it is, where it's advertised as where you can pay your rent with your card and not incur any of those rental transaction fees of when you're paying your rent with a credit card. What this looks like is essentially that you're going to earn 1 BILT point per dollar spent, up to 100,000 points each year. Doing the math, that's essentially saying that, hey, if your rent's, let's say, $8,000, you're in New York City, and this number is pretty typical, then 8 times 12 months, that's $96,000 spent. In other words, you're still a little shy of that 100,000 point cap that you can earn when you're spending on rent. There is one supreme caveat with this, but right before we get into that, the general earning structure is 3x when you spend on dining purchases, 2x on travel, and 1x everywhere else. The specific caveat is that you do need to use this card at least 5 times in a month, in other words, 5 transactions, and if you don't, then let's say we're in the same situation, we're paying 8K plus in rent per month, we're not going to get that many points. What's going to happen is that we get a floor rate of 250 points if we don't use our card for that 5 transaction minimum in a month, and let's say our rent, just an example, is $100 a month. Then instead of getting just 100 points, we'd get at least 250. The understanding here is that if you don't use your card at least 5 times in a month, then you're not really going to get the whole selling point of this card. For some folks, this is a daily driver card. This 5 transaction minimum doesn't mean anything. It's hit very normally and it's no biggie. For those that it's not so normal, here are a few ideas basically to make it happen without stressing yourself out. You could buy a stick of gum. You could pay into your utilities a few bucks. You can reload your Amazon balance. You can split a purchase, let's say if you're out and about, and split into 2 cards when you're checking out the grocery store. Or if you're dining out, you can put a few bucks on the card, for a few bucks or half the payment, what have you. So there's a lot of ways to do it. Of course, it's a mental exercise and it is what it is, but that's the cost to pay. to get those points on that rent category. There's another way to earn bonus points with your BILT card, and it kind of eats into the reason of, hey, there's no intro offer, but there's a lot of value to be had as you hold this card in the longer term. Each and every first of the month, there's an event. It's known as Rent Day, where you're getting double the points on each and every dollar spent on your categories except rent. Essentially, the 3x on dining would be 6x per dollar spent. Instead of 2x on travel, you're looking at 4x, and that 1x everywhere else would be 2x. And there is a cap to this. It's going to be 1,000 points in that day of spend. Switching over to the autograph card, the earn rate is essentially 1x everywhere else and 3x on the specific categories, which are quite a few. They're going to be for restaurants, gas stations, travel, transit, popular streaming services, and phone plans. Given the same understanding that the autograph cards points and the BILT cards points are not the same, I'll cover more into this in the analysis section. And so with that, let's go into the benefits that both of these cards have to offer for us. These cards can unlock us great travel opportunities. Yet, at the same time, that doesn't mean that both of these cards are really well optimized for travel. Although both of them have no foreign transaction fees, and they also have a feature known as auto damage collision waiver, which can be very helpful when you're renting a car, one of the cards has something that the other just doesn't. What the BILT card offers us, which the autograph doesn't, is as follows: trip cancellation and interruption insurance, as well as trip delay reimbursement. Aside from these pure travel benefits, there's also cell phone protection that both of these cards offer to us, but the amounts, they differ. My understanding is that because the BILT MasterCard is a World Elite MasterCard, which comes with a certain range of benefits, whilst on the other hand with the autograph card, it's a Visa signature card, which that has its own benefits through Visa. And so the understanding is that these two could be different, as well as another myriad of benefits that are offered through both of these cards because of this reason. With the autograph card, we're looking at up to $600 in cell phone protection with a $25 deductible, and this is going to be towards reasons such as damage and theft. On the other hand, with the BILT MasterCard, we're looking at up to $800 in cell phone protection with that same $25 deductible, with the reasons outside of damage and theft also including unintended separation. In English, that translates to I lost my phone or I forgot it somewhere. The important thing to remember here is that you need to be paying your phone bill in full on time and using these cards specifically. There's definitely a lot of other credit cards where you get 5x points per dollar spent on your phone bill, yet when it comes to these situations to take opportunity of these insurances / protections, we need to be paying our bill in full with these specific cards. So coming back to the crux of the question of how do we choose one of these cards over the other, it's really going to come down to how we value these points. In other words, what are the different options to redeem said points for what type of experiences, or maybe that's just cash back purely as an option if we ever wanted to pull that lever. Or, hey, I love gift cards and let's do that. Or, just a type of transfer partners. In other words, there's different ones when it comes to choosing, let's say, with the autograph or the BILT MasterCard. At the current time of recording, they're not under one main umbrella. And so what that means is there's going to be different transfer partners for each of these cards individually. And if you want to prioritize one or the other, then that may come into the equation. So with that, let's take a deep dive into both and take it from there. I will start off specifically with the Wells Fargo Autograph card. So we're here in my Wells Fargo account and I have 43,000 and change points. And what we can do with them and how I got them was purely through the Wells Fargo Autograph card. The BILT MasterCard is its own ecosystem. And outside of credit cards, I have one Wells Fargo checking account for our knowledge here today. So with that first option being redeemed to your account, I can basically deposit these points at 1 penny a point to that checking account for that value of $439.74. And equivalently, whether it's gift cards, redeem for purchases, or just basically a myriad of options that we see here on screen, they're all at 1 penny per point. And even if it's travel, if it's like a $100 flight, then that's, let's say, 10,000 points. And if it's like 100,000 points, then that's $1,000 worth of whether it's travel, booking through their portal, or these other options. And so when we get to the rewards points transfer, that's basically saying like, hey, we can transfer our points to partners such as airlines and hotels. It takes a second to load, at least for me it did right now. So with that, when we see the airlines, the different options, we have, let's say, Air Club, Avianca, British Airways, Iberia, Virgin Atlantic. So these options at the current time of recording, and they're all at a 1-to-1 ratio. In other words, 1,000 points would be 1,000 miles. And the increments here are actually going to be as minimum as 1 penny rather 1 mile that you can transfer instead of a minimum of 1,000 miles per transfer. And I have a video step by step of how that looks like. I'll link it up over here. And with that, let's keep it going. So for hotels, it's the only one that's not one to one. It's going to be one of our points to two choice privilege points. And in travels and experiences, it looks similar to Virgin Atlantic, but it's basically the Virgin Red program where you're basically able to book other experiences outside of just purely flights, and it's at 1 point equal to one Virgin point. And what this really means is you could basically transfer all your points here, but within Virgin's ecosystem, you can still transfer those points to Virgin Atlantic to book flights that way. So just like extra cherry on top of knowledge, which I didn't know until I knew. And now we're in the BILT app, where at the top right, I have 794 points at the current time of recording. And in general, the BILT rewards program is a lot more gamified. It's not very like super straightforward or traditional. It's very it makes you want to engage with them or vice versa. And so I am the status of silver. And what that really means, apart from these kind of requirements, which you can pause and kind of take a look, it's basically saying that, hey, I'm able to do certain things. And so all of these status benefits are here on screen. So the eligibility requirements are at the top. And basically, I don't really personally take advantage of a lot of these benefits, so I'm not going to act like I do and tell you a deep dive of each of them. But what it is basically that, okay, the main thing here that I care about is that you have one-to-one point transfers with airlines and hotels with a minimum of 1,000 points. Where before, when you're not silver, so for example, if we toggle to blue, which is the base level, you basically have a 2,000 point minimum. So for me right now at 794 points, I can't do either of the options of transferring to points, my points to hotels or airlines. But with the Wells Fargo same kind of card with the same issuer, you're able to transfer your points at a 1 point minimum. So with that said, if we go example to the gold tier, what you could be looking at is, these other levels of benefits. And if you go to platinum, I'll just put it on here so you can kind of pause and see what it is, if it makes sense for you or otherwise to kind of consider it. But the whole point here is that on that rent day specifically, you basically may have, if we look at, for example, let's come back to exactly what I am just for a real case example, you can have higher rent day transfer bonuses. And so in other words, if I'm silver status or in general, and these are real, offers that have been there where, hey, get a 70% boost on the same miles or points you're willing to transfer to a certain program, but you get a huge boost, which you wouldn't get out otherwise. And so kind of planning for the first, if they have these kind of limited time promos or otherwise, could be super, super advantageous. When it comes to the BILT MasterCard, there's a ton of more options for transfer partners compared to the Autograph card. There is some overlap, yet this is the list of what they are. We have British Airways, United, Emirates, Cathay Pacific, Air France, Air Canada, Alaska, Iberia, Virgin Atlantic, Turkish, Avianca, and Aer Lingus. And on the hotel side, we have Hilton, IHG, Hyatt, as well as Marriott. In general, there's multiple ways to use BILT points, and how valuable they are, I have my personal opinion, and you can definitely craft your own. And with that, let's just take a look and get into it. So the first one over here is basically going to be, pay your card balance with points. And this is important because if I click this, you'll basically see that, hey, I have the statement balance at this time, points to use is this amount, and the statement credit would be worth this amount. And if we do the math, it's basically like half a penny per point. So if I had, let's say, 800 points in my account, is that $4 basically of statement credit? Not necessarily. But if you see this math, it's basically like that half point, 0.6 value. From there, you can also pay your rent with points. So when I click redeem now, this doesn't look like a 0.5 cents per point value, but that's the understanding. It is the same value as prior, and I think it's attributed to just some logic or math logic they have going on in the background, because as we can also see, it's a minimum redemption of 1,000 points to even have this option. So just want to point out that if you basically have 10,000 points, that should be $50 of value towards this credit, or 100,000 would be $500, etc. From there, we can redeem points for the BILT Home Design Collection. This is definitely going to be an each their own type of thing, because what's basically able to be redeemed here is going to be very subjective. I would say that's more art essentially, or more creative type of items. So that value is going to be up to the individual to how much you value it or not. I may have my opinion, but everyone's their own person. So what that means is the Travertine candlestick for 5k points. With 5k points, I've gone, let's say, from Paris to London one way nonstop in economy, And so what that really means is I value those experiences more than maybe these items. And maybe that changes, if you're trying to make your aesthetic look a certain way. But with that, these are, basically me scrolling. Some more examples of what you can see is kind of this home collection catalog equivalent within the BILT rewards program where you can redeem your points for these type of items. Breaking it down of choosing one over the other, I would say it really comes down to the sheer fact of when I look at the autograph personally, right? It's very simple. It's 3x points on 6 different categories, 1x everywhere else. And yeah, sure, the cell phone protection isn't as good as the BILT MasterCard, but in general, it basically does the job. And you still have the capability to transfer points to partners where if those partners make sense for you and you don't really need to consider any others, then you basically have your answer. For me personally, I like flexibility amongst other things. And so having points in this Wells Fargo ecosystem, really, when I got this card the very first time, they didn't even have transfer partners for the Wells Fargo Autograph card. It was based on a rumor that it was going to come out in a few months, which is the exact reason of why I even applied for the Wells Fargo Autograph card. And when I got it, great. And they had some delays of introducing these partners. So that sign up bonus that I got of 30K points and whatever organic spend was just kind of sitting there. And honestly, I did 1 point for some tutorial video, and those points are still sitting, in that account for when I want and are needing to use them. So from an overall strategic perspective, me to have this card as a daily driver, I say it's a great card. Now, do I use it every day? Hardly ever, to be very honest. At the same time, it's a great card for the average person, the normal individual who basically wants a clean and simple setup. And I think there's something wrong with that. And with that same reasoning, though, if you think about the BILT MasterCard by Wells Fargo, that actually could trump this reasoning where if your spend is mainly on dining or travel or basically that those like lifestyle expenses versus maybe optimizing for groceries and gas, which is a very normal expense. But for me, I used to be a management consultant, traveling on the road, and if I could use my personal card for each and every dollar spent everywhere, period, I would prioritize it on the BILT MasterCard, not necessarily for their insurances, but those that that range of transfer partners, the flexibility it gives you, and just the programs that I value more. For example, when it comes to hotels, Hyatt, I'm number one fan for redeeming points with Hyatt, and with just a Wells Fargo Autograph card, you have Choice Hotels. That's cool for maybe the more budget options, and they have some nice properties. Don't get me wrong, but that's not going to be the use case for me, let's say worldwide, especially if you're traveling, to certain locales. I think a fun thing that I didn't really cover in our demo was basically with the BILT MasterCard, you also have the opportunity to do this kind of neighborhood dining where when you spend with certain merchants, as long as your cards are linked in the app, so you're not even spending on the BILT card itself, they're just linked, you still get those bonus points. So if you're dining at some pizza place where you get 5x points for dining in the neighborhood, at that location, then you're getting the standard, let's say, 3x if we're just using a BILT card to keep the example simple, plus an extra 5x. So you're talking about like 8x points per dollar spent. And, if I'm using those points to transfer to Hyatt, where I value them 2 pennies per point, then that's like 16% back of like, let's say, true cash value, which, I have no complaints with that. Moving on from there, if we're looking at that 5-time transactions in a month, I would say like, yes, it's pretty annoying if you're an infrequent user of the card or you forgot that month and you're like, shoot, I'm not going to get those bonus points. I totally get it, been there, done that, etc. And so now I just kind of use those same methods that I said in the beginning of the video where I was like, hey, it's just a part of your daily spending, lifestyle, or what have you, or these certain workaround situations, use them as you need. And for me specifically, I didn't get the biggest credit limit with the BILT MasterCard, which that kind of, forget about feelings, it's just objectively speaking, if my rent really was even higher, then I would be technically losing out on points that, I could have actually been earning, points on. So all that to say, it's not that big of a deal, but yeah, it's going to be annoying for some, and for some, that's where the Wells Fargo Autograph could just be better than the BILT card for this one specific use case. In my personal opinion, the big challenge between choosing one over the other really is going to come down to the way you want to use your points. If you're team cashback, then I don't even think this decision of choosing between the both is really even a decision to be made, because with the Wells Fargo Autograph card, you can cash out your points at 1 penny a point, and you know exactly, hey, I'm getting 3x on these categories, I'm getting exactly 3% back. On the other hand, with the BILT card, basically we saw how it looked like. It's basically 0.5 cents per point, when you want to redeem towards, let's say, your rent or statement credit. And there is one use case, and I forgot to show it to us on screen, but I'll put a screenshot here. Basically, it's the fact that if you want to put your points towards a down payment, it could be done at a higher rate of value. And so in other words, if you have 10,000 points, if it was towards a credit, it'd be, let's say, 0.5 value. So in other words, 10,000 would be $50. But here you're getting 1.5 pennies per point in terms of value towards a down payment for a home. So that same 10,000 points would be 150. If you have 100,000 points, you're looking at $1,500 of value towards a down payment. And in these situations, I would typically think that, hey, someone's basically hoarding points, but not in a bad way. But, the only bad part I see is, if they ever go away with this program and you're kind of saving up your points for this use case, that would be very detrimental. But I would assume that, hopefully that never happens. And on the flip side, on rent day, there are beautiful bonuses depending on those levels of tier of status you are. If you're like silver, gold, platinum, all of that, you're basically getting like a huge potential multiplier. So those same points, if you're looking for some type of value with travel, that could be way, way, way more than that 1.5 cents per point towards your future down payment. For me personally, it's a no-brainer. The BILT card is going to win over the Wells Fargo Autograph card every single time because I don't look at points for cash back. Like, it's great as an insurance policy. If we ever, example, you have 5 million points. I always think about this scenario where you can exchange 5 million points for, you do the math, like what is that amount? Oh, it's $50,000 cash. That is not a bad amount of cash. That's a decent amount of cash. And sure, you can travel the world multiple times in first class with that same number of points. But someone like me, like, I do think about that. Like, hey, if you have 10 million points, like, wait a second, instead of blowing it on X number of first class flights, like, that's 100 grand cash. Like, this is a totally different topic. So I would just say the BILT MasterCard over the autograph card is going to be definitely the way to go, unless, hey, this example makes sense and the autograph card at even 1 penny per point for cashback is something you want to optimize for. But at that point, you can also optimize this framework for any other type of cashback earning cards. So on that same note, there's actually 2 other credit cards which have no annual fee and earn in the same structure, like points, which can be redeemed for cashback at 1 penny a point, and actually considered to be the best in the entire industry. So check it out over here, and I'll see you there.